All right. Um, One thing that actually has started to bother me is that it's related to the developer experience, and I thought it might be good topic for a session that to discuss the topics and things that nobody told you about developer experience. Oh, I will cover the things that actually has been covered normally and what's the normal approach, but I'll go a bit deeper and let's see. Well, first of all, probably everyone to some extent agree that the aim of the DX developer experience is to help the developers to be more productive and happy and etc etc etc. But I think the productive and happy and so on is the normal thinking what the DX is for and why it's valuable. According to the state of API 2019 report, usability / developer experience is the second most important thing among the companies to measure the success of their APIs, and that wasn't there previous year, but now it's there. So the DX is rising also in wider scope or among the companies. And yes, the performance is still the biggest thing, and it's the defining the successful API program, but it seems that the DX is possibly a key aspect in winning the competition, because if there's 2 or 3 APIs and one of them has superior developer experience, that probably is selected. Even in some cases, although the other aspects of the API are not that great, for example, the pricing might be a bit higher, but if the DX is just excellent and everyone wants to use it and feels more productive with it, they will probably select that one. So this is normally the thing to justify for the business management, that why the hell should we focus on the DX. It's in general. This is what normally is told that what DX is. Here's a couple of slides of more or less traditional topics and values that are presented to you. Well, the API product must provide instant value immediately, and in my experience, if your company actually provides multiple APIs which are normally used together to actually provide the instant value, it might make sense to actually think about building your own libraries, because if the developer needs to learn 5 or 6 APIs separately, it's the learning curve is getting steeper. And if you think about providing just a library which actually then consumes the APIs behind the scenes, and using the library is faster and easier, and the developer is again more productive, they probably want to use it. And the Stripe has been using this kind of strategy, obviously, and I've seen other companies, successful API-driven companies, to use the same approach as well. So I'm a strong believer of the libraries-driven future, even though the APIs will stay there. Onboarding is self-service based, so no more emailing to anyone about any kind of API keys or getting an account or anything. It has to be self-service. This has been the default for a while already. The biggest reason to actually ditch any kind of API is sucky, out-of-date documentation, and focus on that. Make it bright and make it shine. Low learning curve. Yes, it has to be easy to onboard, easy to learn, easy to get the first positive experience as fast as possible. This is about hooking the developer to your API and your product. This is what we all know already, and and naturally you need to provide the freemium version because it offers space and time for learning without any costs. So the developers want to try it out, see the value immediately, and then they actually decide that actually, yes, this is a good one, I'm ready to pay for it. If possible, provide some sample applications, open source, so that the product can be seen in use in some kind of context. Because even if your API documentation has code examples, those are normally snippets and doesn't really actually give any thorough example of how the API fits into different use cases or applications. So provide some applications if possible. Then your API is probably not the only API used by the developers, so you need to think about how to fit into developers' workflow and the tool stack. A lot of developers use Postman and other tools, so think how your product fits into their workflow. So providing easy way to learn your API with help of the Postman and other tools is something you should definitely look into. Follow the architectural trends that's going on. Events driven is now the thing. Streaming APIs and subscription mode. Developers don't want to pull any information, or they hate the polling approach, where they need to be active participant and the server is the passive one. Instead, they want you to push the updates whenever something is updated in the data, for example. And developers just love the tools. So CLI tools for automation and testing purposes as well. Alright, this is the one that normally is discussed. This is the result of the DX, how the DX is. But that's only one part of the picture, and that's the topic of this session. So what else is developer experience exactly? First of all, I would like to make clear that there are internal and external developer experience. The internal is the one that actually is your developers building your APIs, building your own products, which are actually consuming the data through the APIs that you actually have built, so that they are using it internally to get some kind of to build automation to increase the efficiency and build your own applications for your own customers, and so on and so on and so on. Then there's the external developer experience, which is the other side, when you publish the APIs for the partners or even for anyone to consume, and then your focus is on the sales and in the growth and so on. So there is always the two sides, internal and external. Rarely it makes sense to have any significant differences between the two. Sometimes there is, but it actually creates problematic situations eventually. And even the famous Bezos mandate says that yes, you should actually treat your internal APIs as if they would be published someday in the future. So do the same documentation process, do everything the same as if it would be the public API. I'll discuss later on in the episodes about the differences between technocentric, product-centric, customer-centric, and developer-centric. But keep in mind that there's always the company internal developer experience, and then the external developer experience, which is focused on the third-party developers. But again, back to the DX itself. So I read this fabulous article some years ago already, written by Fagerholm and Munch, about developer experience concept and definition. And that really opened my eyes, because normally the things that are discussed about the DX is the 1/3 of it. It's the cognition part of it. So the technological part of it, the platform, the techniques, and so on. So it's about how the developers perceive the development infrastructure, including your API again. So this one part is the one that actually is discussed as the DX. But according to Fagerholm and Munch, there are two other aspects as well. and those are not controlled by the API provider. Those are controlled by the developer and the surroundings. So their company possibly are infecting the developer experience for the developers, not your API. So one third of your control, and the remaining 2/3 are out of your control. You have no control of it. So the other aspects are affect and the conation. I'm not gonna go into every detail about it, but if you can actually read it yourself in the document, in the paper, which is an awesome paper. But there's the social aspect, there's the belonging, there's the respect and team. So how the developers feel about their work. It's the social and emotional aspect of the work and development. And then there's the conation part. So the goals, alignment, intention, motivation, commitment. So how do developers see the value of their contribution? What are they building with your APIs, and how that fits into the bigger plans and goals? So developer experience is more than just the cognition part, which is normally pushed to us in presentations and conferences and so on. This led to me to think about the different aspects that actually affect the developer experience. And I put the cognition part from the Fagerholm and Munch paper in the middle. So I'm ruling out now 2/3 of the DX in this page and in this model. But then I started to think about what actually affects the building of the DX. And well, of course, in the top you have the customer requirements management. Are the third-party developers heard? What are their needs? Are you taking the feedback, and how actively are you responding, and so on? And what's your support, and what's the analytics and everything? Are you analyzing the usage of the API efficiently with the API management and so on? Then you have the design process where you actually is your API development process so that it actually you try to fit to the customer's needs with the API and reduce the waste in the process. And are you design first driven, or are you code first driven? With the design first, you actually can minimize the waste, and you can engage the developers, the API consumers, to the development process itself. Then your product business or your company's business strategy and model actually affects the developer experience. Do the management and business people understand the value of freemium? Do they actually want to push the trial for some reason? I don't get it when it should be. Possibly there are situations, but normally the freemium is the thing. Partner APIs is the pricing of the plans attractive for the consumers? Are they too high, too low, too suspicious? There's gaps, and there might be caps, and so on. Do the plans fit the market needs? So that actually affects the developer experience itself as well. And then your internal developer experience and architecture might provide some limitations for the efficiency and the usability and so on. So if your architecture doesn't support flexibility and agility to fit to match the needs of your API customers, then you're in trouble anyway. Then in the release and deployment process, it's not only about pushing the API out there, but if you have guides that actually give some kind of examples how those APIs are used, you need to update those as well before you push the new version of the API, or even an increment for the existing version of the API. You need to make sure that the API documentation is updated when you're releasing the new increment for API or a new version of it. What if you have libraries? What happens with the libraries if you make a new version of the API? So it's a big thing to actually make any kind of releases with the APIs. Even small change, there's some connections to different other aspects of the developer experience, and you need to plan your releasing and deployment really thoroughly and think about the different things that need to be updated. Then your sales and marketing, they need to understand the developer experience. Normally the persons selected there, they do already, and they actually might be the evangelists and salespeople and so on. And then you have the bigger developer relations, so which, in my opinion, is more about faster adoption. Of course, there's different points of view what is developer relations, but for me it's a faster adoption among the third-party developers. So it's videos, blogs, events, evangelists, and the target group is the developer itself. This is the thing that actually came to my mind when I started to look at the deeper level. What the hell is a DX? And this is only about the things that I immediately saw affecting the cognition part of the developer experience. So only that 1/3 of the developer experience, and that's about it. But I'm still want to promote the work that I did for 3 months, writing one post about developer experience every day, and it's all publicly available at 100daysdx.com. And it's about 378 pages material, and that's available for everyone. It's the biggest open resource on developer experience so far. And also the book that I wrote together with 3 colleagues, and it's API Economy 101. So look at it and read it, and you'll be surprised anyway. So this was the episode about developer experience, things nobody told you about, and hopefully you know a little bit more now.